Ibrahim Traore has never been this angry. And what he unleashed after an insurgent organization's assault on his homeland wasn't just revenge. It was a message, a declaration, a new chapter in Africa's war against foreign-backed instability, chaos, and violence. When over 1,000 armed militants stormed into Burkina Faso while the president was away in Russia, the world expected panic. What they got instead was precision, cold, calculated, and devastating. In less than an hour, 3 drones, no jets, no boots, just unmanned firepower, turned a coordinated jihadist invasion into smoldering ashes. The operation was a military masterpiece, a technological flex, and a moment that should have earned the respect of the international community. But instead, the BBC accused Traore of killing civilians. So now we have to ask, was this really about drone casualties, or is something deeper at play? Who benefits from undermining Traore right after he humiliates an insurgent organization? And why does Africa get scolded for winning? In this video, let's unpack what really happened. While President Ibrahim Traore stood tall in Moscow's Red Square, draped in military green, flanked by Russian generals and saluting alongside Vladimir Putin, a different kind of battlefield was already heating up thousands of kilometers away in the Sahel. The Victory Day parade might have looked symbolic, but in Traore's mind, war was no ceremony. And he knew the real battle wasn't being fought with trumpets and flags. It was waiting for him at home. Back in Burkina Faso, the town of Djibo was bracing for what intelligence labeled a multi-pronged incursion. Over 1,000 heavily armed militants had converged after months of sleeper cell buildup. These weren't spontaneous raiders. They were coordinated, reinforced, and deeply embedded. Traore's physical absence was meant to be the trigger, the sign of vulnerability the insurgents had waited for. Their mission was clear: destabilize, dominate, and send a message to the world that Burkina Faso was leaderless, fractured, and ripe for collapse. But there was one problem. Ibrahim Traore had read the playbook and rewritten it. His trip to Russia wasn't just diplomatic, it was tactical. It was bait. Behind the scenes, military command in Ouagadougou had been hard at work for weeks. With technical assistance from Russian advisors, Chinese surveillance analysts, and North Korean electronic warfare experts, Burkina Faso had set a digital net around Djibo. Drones had been pre-deployed to a remote airstrip just outside the northern combat zone. Communications intercepts were actively being monitored. Ground informants embedded in the local community had mapped movement patterns, weapon caches, and hideouts. Every breath the insurgents took was already in the system. When the attack finally began, the Burkinabe army didn't rush to the front lines. No helicopters took off. No trucks rolled north. The command didn't even raise the alert to DEFCON levels. Instead, the instruction was whispered across encrypted military channels in 4 simple words: let the drones hunt. At precisely 3:42 a.m., the first North Korean drone rose into the sky. Sleek, black, angular, its primary mission was not destruction, but disruption. Fitted with directional acoustic emitters, it began pushing sonic pressure into the terrain. Panic followed. Militants, expecting a quiet invasion, were now disoriented, forced to flee their staging zones, and herd together for cover. Then came the second drone, identical in build, circling the opposite flank. Between them, the militants were boxed in like a herd guided not by instinct, but by invisible lines drawn from the air. And then, the third drone arrived. A ghost in the sky. White, nearly silent, equipped with infrared thermal lenses and real-time AI targeting algorithms, hovering high above like a predator too patient to blink. What followed wasn't a firefight. It was an execution, calculated, clean, and horrifying in its efficiency. The clearing became a trap. Trees caught flames from below as the AI-guided drone delivered precise bursts, avoiding civilian zones with programmed accuracy. One escape route was left open, a corridor leading to what seemed like a road to safety. A single truck, armed with fighters, attempted to flee. The AI drone allowed it to pass until it reached the halfway point. Then the engine was destroyed with a single pulse-directed strike. No explosions, no collateral damage, just silence, and then stillness. By 4:17 a.m., it was over. Over 1,000 enemy combatants had been neutralized. Not a single Burkina soldier had fired a weapon. No civilians were killed. No towns were damaged. And the operation, launched from a secure digital war room in Ouagadougou, was broadcast live to Traore himself as he sipped tea in the Kremlin. This wasn't just warfare. It was a message. To the insurgents, your time is up. To the West, we no longer need your intelligence. And to the rest of Africa, sovereignty isn't about territory anymore. It's about technology, timing, and trust in yourself. Burkina Faso didn't just repel an attack. It pioneered a new kind of warfare, African-made, African-run, and African-won. Now, the real question was, how would the world react? Well, Traore didn't expect applause, but he didn't expect betrayal either. While Burkina Faso's citizens celebrated, while African youth shared footage of the drone strike like a video game turned real, a different story was already being spun in foreign newsrooms. BBC Africa ran a headline accusing the government of civilian deaths. No mention of insurgents, no context, no explanation. It wasn't journalism, it was sabotage. What made this sting worse wasn't just the misinformation. It was the timing. Traore had chosen to reject Western dependency. No French boots, no UN advisors, no IMF funding. Instead, he aligned with sovereign partners in the East. He partnered with nations that gave tools, not lectures. And this operation? It worked. It proved the West wrong. It showed that Burkina Faso didn't need foreign occupation to defeat insurgency, violence, and chaos. Just technology, strategy, and African command. But Western media didn't want that story to spread, because if other African leaders saw Traore's success without NATO's permission, what would happen next? Would the West's grip crumble? So they buried the victory and exhumed old colonial narratives, painting the African military not as defenders, but as aggressors. And Traore's greatest military triumph was smeared as an attack on civilians by those who benefit most from Africa staying weak. You see, Africa is fighting two wars, one with guns and the other with headlines. Ibrahim Traore knew this wasn't just a military moment, it was a media war. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. Across Africa, people saw the hypocrisy instantly. When America launches a drone strike in Somalia, it's called tactical. When France bombs Mali, it's counterinsurgency. But when a young African captain defeats 1,000 insurgents in under 60 minutes, it's controversial. The double standard is blinding. And for Traore, it's not just about Burkina Faso anymore. It's about the entire continent's right to defend itself without apology. Why should Africa be forced to explain its survival? Why is the West's violence always framed as justice, while Africa's justice is framed as violence? Because control is narrative, and narrative is power. Every time a headline twists a fact, it's an attack. Every time a drone strike by Burkina Faso is labeled excessive, it reinforces a dangerous idea that Africans can't lead, can't fight smart, can't govern without oversight. But that lie is cracking. With every drone strike led from Ouagadougou, with every speech where Traore says, "We will stand alone if we must," Africa's silence is breaking, and the West is losing control, not just of territory, but of the story itself. However, by the time the Western media twisted the story, it was already too late. The real war had been won not just on the battlefield, but in the command center. Hidden behind secure walls in Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim Traore wasn't just informed, he was watching. Live thermal scans, drone surveillance, heat signatures, He saw every heartbeat in that forest. Not a single decision was made without precise verification. The airstrike wasn't chaotic, it was choreography. This wasn't a blunt military assault. It was a masterclass in restraint and calculation. One fleeing truck, intentionally left untouched, acted as bait. The drone operators, trained by a mixed cadre of Russian and North Korean technicians, tracked it as militants scrambled for escape. When the civilians in the surrounding area had cleared, one single shot disabled the engine. The driver fled on foot. The drones didn't chase him immediately. They waited for confirmation, no civilians in the radius, before delivering the final blow. This is what the West doesn't want people to know. There were no scorched villages, no collateral damage, no reckless carpet bombing. This wasn't the model of Western drone strikes in Yemen or Somalia. This was new. This was African, and it was terrifyingly efficient. And that's the danger, because the operation proved something that Western powers have spent decades denying. Africa can defend itself with brains, not just bravery. Burkina Faso didn't need a foreign military base. It didn't need a UN observer team. It needed sovereignty and a man willing to act on it. Traore didn't just eliminate 1,000 insurgents. He shattered the myth of African dependency. And for Western media, that was a threat too big to ignore. You see, the campaign against Traore didn't begin after the drone strike. It began when he stopped asking for permission. What he did in the skies above Djibo wasn't just a military success. It was a declaration of rebellion. A declaration that Africa no longer needs advisors in tailored suits who have never held a rifle, never buried a friend, never walked the blood-soaked soil they claim to care about. And that terrifies the world order. Because the structure that has defined Africa's place for decades is fragile, and Traore just kicked it hard. USAID, NATO partnerships, and European stabilization missions are all built on one unspoken rule. African nations can survive, but they must never lead. They can fight insurgency, but only under Western supervision. They can trade, but only on Western terms. And they can govern if Washington or Paris approves of the system. But Traore rewrote the system. He partnered with China, North Korea, and Russia. He flew to Moscow. He didn't delay, didn't negotiate, didn't seek applause from Geneva. He acted. And that's what made the BBC's framing predictable. The second a black nation shows strength without Western permission, it's branded as rogue. The second a drone carries an African flag instead of a NATO one, it's cause for concern. But Burkina Faso isn't alone anymore. Across the Sahel, the alliance of Sahel states is gaining momentum. And Algeria, once hesitant, is now throwing out French diplomats. Rwanda is building its own weapons. Mali has restructured its economy around regional self-sufficiency. Something is changing, and the West is scrambling to contain it with headlines, not helicopters. And now here we are. A war was fought and won. A president wasn't in the country, yet he outsmarted an ambush. 1,000 militants were neutralized. No civilian death was verified. But what dominates the global media? Not precision, not a success, not independence. No, they focus on doubt, on shadows, on the possibility that Africa might have gotten too bold. But bold is what the continent needs. And Traore has made his choice. He will not apologize for defending his people. He will not bow to editorial guilt-tripping from countries that killed millions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya. He knows that when Africa acts alone, it gets punished. But he also knows that this time, Africa isn't alone. It's armed, it's coordinated, and it's no longer begging for peace, it's demanding it. What do you think? Did Ibrahim Traore send the right message by annihilating insurgents? Isn't it true that the West wants Traore to go soft so insurgents thrive and create an excuse for the West to interfere? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on what if every African leader adopts a zero-tolerance policy against insurgents targeting people and creating chaos. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.